Hi students. This week we're going to go a little bit deeper into how to actually do media relations. Now, we understand that media relations is essentially 85% of what you're going to be doing if you have a PR job. And we also know that you can't buy media coverage. This is not a paid opportunity. This has to be earned. The only way that you're able to earn coverage is by having a good story and convincing the journalists and the reporters that they should want to cover your story. This is going to be based on whether or not that story is what we call newsworthy. And so today we're going to talk about newsworthiness and storytelling. How do you actually come up with something that is going to compel a reporter or a journalist or a mediator, a blogger, an influencer, somebody else to want to tell your story for you? And this really boils down to having really good, strong key messages. And key messages are going to be a major component of your PR portfolio. So the sooner you learn how to write really solid key messages, the better your campaign and the better your entire portfolio is going to be. So let's talk a little bit about where we are in the plan. Now, we talked a few weeks ago about when you're devising a communication plan, the important thing is to spend a lot of time up front doing your research and your analysis into exactly where you are and where you want to be. From there, you can decide what your objectives of the campaign are and who your key audience is. Only then do you start to devise your actual messages. So step 4 of the plan are creating your key messages. And let's talk a little bit about that. So key messages are really, what do I want to say? Now, when you're going through the plan, you begin with sort of basic questions. What do we hope to achieve? Those are your objectives. Who do we want to talk to? Your audience. What do I want to say to them? Key messages. And then you move on to how shall we say it? Where shall we say it and when? Which are your strategies and tactics? And then how do you even know if it worked? And that's your evaluation. So again, it's a very formulaic way of establishing your goals and giving yourself the tools that you need to actually make those goals achievable. So for an example, if you were trying to, if you had an objective to increase awareness of your particular issue, this is very broad, I just kind of want to show you how this breaks down. So your objective, we went through this, you want SMART objectives. These are going to be specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and timely. Okay, so with your objective, you want to be as specific as possible and you want to put a time frame on it and you want to do something that's going to be measurable. So a good objective would be increase awareness amongst this target audience by 10% within 6 months. That sets your objective. Now, the key messages follow a kind of guideline of this product exists, here are the features and benefits, this is why X audience would be interested in this product, and it is available here now. So you can see that you've actually, the key messages are not sales like, whoa, go out and buy this. It's not a slogan. It's not jargony. It's very specific and very informative. And what you want to do is you want to think about your key messages in a way that actually guides the reader so that they get all the information that they need. The product exists. Here are the features and benefits. Here's who will be most interested in it, and here's how they can actually get it. Okay, and then from there you choose your strategy, which would be a multi-channel media relations campaign launched with a publicity stunt, and then your tactics would be things like your event, your publicity stunt, your press conference, your media room, your news release, your interviews, your pitching. So that's how everything starts to go together. But let's dive a little bit more deeply into actually developing key messages. So, the point is that you've really got to understand your audience and you've got to understand where you are targeting your message to. So, public relations is all about earning coverage in the media and you cannot buy it. You've got to convince someone to want to cover your story. And in order to do this, you have to, as we know, first compile a good media list of where you want to begin. So this is understanding the beats and the reporters and the appropriate media channels that you will be using to target. Then developing contacts and then finding the right message for the medium. So it's all about finding you have your message and then you have to find your the outlets that you want to target and then you sort of put them together. And this is where the storytelling really starts to come in. So you have to understand that reporters act as gatekeepers, okay? You cannot just place a story in the media. You cannot just call up BBC 10 o'clock news or the Metro or the Guardian or the New York Times and just say, can you run this story? That it doesn't work that way. The reporters themselves act as gatekeepers. They are the decision makers about whether they think something is worth running or not. And in order for them to even be relevant, you have to know their beats. You have to make sure you are targeting them with a story that is actually going to be interesting to them based on what they normally write or report on. Okay, so number one thing that reporters say is their biggest annoyance is PR people who don't understand their beats. And so a political reporter will be getting sports stories, or a fashion reporter will be getting political stories, or something that just is not relevant to anything they write about. So that's your first point, is you have to do your research and know who you're targeting. So acting as gatekeepers, what they do is they filter and they select the information that they deem newsworthy, interesting, and important. So you have to kind of be in their shoes, and you have to kind of really think about what is it that they're looking for? What do their audiences want? And how do I make my story compelling to them? So in order to pitch to them well, you have to convince them that your position is valid, that you have a newsworthy story that their audiences would be interested in reading or hearing about. So you have to understand their audience, and you also have to understand the news value of your story, okay? So, you've got to research not only the outlet you're contacting, but also the interests of the individual reporter that you're going to be contacting, and you've got to be able to make a pitch that aligns with their interests and your story together. This is actually difficult to do, but when you actually get it right, magic can happen and you get great coverage. So much about knowing how to do PR well is knowing how to tell a good story and get the reporter interested and engaged and sort of seeing you as a valid source of information. So news value can be a little bit complicated. Generally, there are factors that influence whether a particular story will receive coverage, what kind of coverage it will receive, and whether or not the media will even cover it at all. Okay? So these sort of factors, unfortunately, are not universal, and it really will depend on the publication that you're targeting. And different publications and different media outlets use their news, like they have different types of news values depending on their key audiences. And they use different criteria to assess the newsworthiness of a story. So again, we talked a couple of weeks ago about timing and the fact that, in print media, like magazines, they have a little bit more time and they can kind of get a little bit deeper into a story, whereas things on social are going to happen more quickly. And again, it's going to be really dependent on whether they're covering celebrity and lifestyle or sport or hard news and political and business news. So again, really understanding kind of the outlet, the target, etc. is really, really important. But the best and only way to be able to understand how this works is to simply read and watch as much as possible. So you cannot work in PR unless you're willing to consume a lot of media. And frankly, you can't work in any of these fields unless you consume a lot of media. So you should be really making a habit of reading daily newspapers, watching the news every night, reading current affairs, just being up on world events. You really have to be someone who's engaged in what the media is putting out in order to know what to put into the media. Okay, so you have to consume a lot of media, and that will help you understand not only the various direction that the media goes in, but also the reporters and the angles, and it will help you really start to think about, oh, if this is on the front page, this is newsworthy. How can I make my story kind of fit with this? In order to know what is newsworthy, you need to know what the news is. But there are really some key areas that most publications and most media outlets will use as a way to determine whether a story is newsworthy. So when you have a story that you want to pitch, the first thing you want to ask yourself is, does this story offer the following? Is there some sort of drama or emotion that you can play off? The media loves drama and emotion because people love drama and emotion. So we love a personal story, something of somebody overcoming something that tugs at your heartstrings a little bit, just something that kind of plays on your emotions. So if you can go for the emotional angle in some way, shape, or form, that's always a good one. Or you could go for something odd or unusual, something that people haven't seen before, something that's a little bit outside of the norm, something that's outside of the box, makes people sort of step up and think, oh, haven't experienced that before. A local angle is always a benefit. So if you're targeting a specifically a local magazine or a local newspaper, or if you've got a story that is local to the audience that reads it, focus on that. Something that is topical or timely. So again, if this is a trend that people are talking about, if you're seeing a lot of movements, and this is something that's seems quite big in popular culture, definitely you want to play off that. And along with drama, people also love conflict. So if there's can be kind of a they said versus they said, or two people going against or something, if there's a level of some sort of unrest or conflict, that's always a good angle if you can, without hurting anyone. And obviously relevance to the specific audience that you're targeting. And then if you've got something that's got universal appeal. So a couple of weeks ago, we were looking at the press release that talked about travel advisory and COVID. That's universal appeal. So that's the kind of thing that everybody's going to be interested in this. So you can see that there's areas that you should really start thinking about. What angle do I approach my story from? Is this topical or timely? Is there a dramatic or emotional element here that we can work on? Is it relevant to specific audiences or even to all audiences? How do we start to angle and create a story that is going to have some of these factors? And you really need to start thinking about your key messages in a way that frames them in a way that's accessible to your audiences. So they have to be believable. They have to be supported by evidence. They have to be understood. So very concise, clear, easy, plain language. Something distinctive that sort of makes them stand out from the crowd. Credible. It has to be valid and, again, believable, something based on facts and evidence. And this is really important. You want to talk about the benefits, not just the features. And we're going to go into a little bit about that in a second. Ideally, they have to be positive. You don't want to focus on negative. And you really want to keep them short, sweet, and simple. Now, again, this is not about advertising slogans. This is about key messages. These are about what is it that you want the audience to know about what it is we're doing. And a good way to sort of think about your key messages is to try to imagine them in media coverage. How would a journalist report on this story? How would it show up on the 10 p.m. news? How would it look in a feature article in the newspaper? How would this look in a call out on the magazine? You really want to sort of put yourself forward in future to think about how that key message is going to play out. And now when I talk about you want to talk about benefits and not just the features, this is basically when you are trying to sell the result, not just the product. So we all know that Popeye loves spinach, but the idea is that he doesn't love spinach because it's spinach. He loves spinach because it makes him strong. So the idea is that what you want to do is you want to focus on the outcome or the result of what it is you're trying to get your audiences to think about it doing. And so if you're launching a product, you want to talk about why that product is going to be useful for people. And that's a good key message. So the product exists. These are who might be interested. This is why it's going to be useful to them. This is what they can gain from that. So remember to think features and benefits. And so in order to sort of do that, you kind of need to understand kind of where you are and what needs to be said. So you need to understand what your existing audience perceptions are, and then you can define the shifts that can be made. So whether that's shifting them from awareness to a positive attitude, or whether that's shifting them from having a positive attitude to actually behavior in terms of buying your product or showing up at your event. So how do you move your audience from A to B to C? You want to identify the elements of persuasion that you can use, the features and the benefits. And you also want to make sure that the messages are deliverable through public relations. This is very important because, again, remember, a journalist is not going to print your advertising slogan. A journalist wants something that is factual and informative, that is useful for their audiences. So your key messages have to be useful, factual, and informative for key audiences. This is not your chance to say, buy now, it's great. It's your chance to say, this product exists, this is why it's beneficial, these are the features and benefits, this is how they can purchase it. So again, you're moving people along the continuum and you're giving them factual, informative information to help them make a decision that is going to be more likely a journalist is going to report that information because they're not interested in in just selling your shit for you. And one key way to think about how key messages really work effectively is to move from the general to specific. So I like to think of it as an inverted triangle. So what you want to do is, again, very generic general messages. This product exists. All the way down. This product exists. This is who might be interested in it. These are the features and benefits. This is where they can buy it. This is the website where it's available. So again, you start very generic, very, very high level general, and you pull people in to the very specific where they can actually take action on your initiative. Okay, so that is basically how key messages work. You will be creating key messages for your portfolios, and the sooner you start to develop, a very clear sort of idea, 3 to 5 messages about what it is you're trying to say, that will help you crystallize your press release, your backgrounder, the pitch, the hook, all of the things that you're going to need for your PR portfolio. Begin with having strong and clear key messages. Now, there's a video that I'm going to post on my learning that I'd like you to watch about the power of persuasion, and it will really help you sort of get into the mindset of how to use language to persuade people to move around that continuum. In class, we're going to be actually looking at some ideas on how you can start to write key messages and write persuasive content for your press releases. That's it for now. I look forward to seeing you in class.